Hey guys, my name is Rob, welcome to Kinetic Rugby League. In this video I'll be giving you my Super League round 17 power rankings. So let's crack on with 12th place. So in 12th place and still in 12th place I have the London Broncos. If I'm comparing them to the teams towards the top like Wigan, Saints, Warrington, Hull KR, Catalans for example, obviously it's not going to do them any justice. It's not going to look great. So basically comparing them to themselves is what I'm going to do. Relatively speaking, over the last 2 weeks, they have looked pretty strong in attack and relatively decent in defence, as I said, compared to where they have been. I think putting up 16 points and 20 points is a solid average over the last 2 weeks. That's a 18-point average over the last 2 weeks, which is all right. And in some cases, if your defence is strong enough, that'll win you a game. But defensively, that's the issue at the moment, is that Super League teams, or the regular Super League teams, they've just got that pace that London just can't really keep up with for the most part. But in terms of attack, I liked some of the stuff they did against Castleford because their intent was really good. They tried to get offloads. I think Meadows did a great job at really attacking the line, drawing defenders in, and then getting that ball out the back precisely and quickly, which helped to create those overlaps on the edges against Castleford. So it's little things like that. If they keep doing it more consistently throughout a game and not just a few times here and there in games, I think London will pick up another win. Not sure against who, but I'd like to think there's another win in there somewhere. And they're constantly learning, constantly improving. But yeah, they're still well off the mark, and I don't know if they'll ever come off the bottom of this power rankings again, to be honest. But yeah, London Broncos still in 12th. Moving on to 11th place, and still in 11th, I have Hull FC. Another team that's well off the mark, but still, relatively speaking, compared to where they were at the start of the season, much better. I think Jake Truman, since coming back in, has helped to transform this team a little bit into much more of a threat attacking-wise. Defensively, they've still got issues, but I think in terms of attack, they certainly look to be a better team. I think a few things going forwards for Hull FC, having Moy at fullback, he's going to continue to learn and develop individually. I think this is going to be good for Jake Truman. I'm trying to think if he was in that Castleford team when they were doing well. I'm not too sure, but this is probably good for Jake Truman, taking on kind of a leadership role and having to carry this team forwards. Jack Charles will get some great experience. Hopefully he's like the starting number seven for the remainder of the season until Abdul comes in next year. Then either he's just like the 18th man or the go-to if Abdul's injured, or he gets some loan experience in the Championship, or there's a Super League team that actually wants to give him a chance as the starting number 7. Like, you never know. So I think it'll be great for Jack Charles, great for Moy, great for Truman. And then with a few new pieces coming in next year, hopefully, and with the coach as well, they can start to progress. But yeah, defensively, they've still got their issues, but in terms of attack, they look a little bit better than where they were. Certainly a more competitive team. But yeah, same with London, well off the mark. Hull FC still in 11th. Moving on to 10th place, and still in 10th place, I have the Huddersfield Giants. Another team that I don't really know where their next win is coming from. Unless it's against London or Hull FC. I don't know how many more games they've got against those teams, but I don't know when Huddersfield's going to get their next win. In attack, obviously, clearly better than against Warrington. They scored 16 more points. And defensively, they conceded 28 less. So, huge turnaround. And not a bad effort against a fairly tricky League team this season as well, so not too bad. But that's the thing with Huddersfield, like it's in them individually, and even a couple times, I think it was probably between like round 6 and 9, somewhere in that region, they actually started putting together some decent performances. So it's within them to put in competitive efforts and even beat tricky teams. But they've just taken a huge slump, and I don't know if it's a culture around the team. It could be that. Or maybe it was just with Watson leaving, that it's like, right, players really need to step it up, so the effort areas were increased. I don't really know, but I don't know where their next win's coming from. They're a pretty abysmal team at the moment, and I think any chance at playoffs is just completely gone at this point. So Huddersfield Giants still in 10th. On to 9th place, and still in 9th place, I have the Castleford Tigers. I think it was a decent effort against a London team that's continuing to fight hard. Not too happy about the fact that they conceded 20 points against London, but obviously, as I referred to with London, I was, impressed with some of the stuff that they did with the ball. So sometimes it's not their fault. Castleford's still looking good. I think I mentioned last week that the chances at a playoff spot are slim. Obviously they are. Mathematically, I think it's still possible, but there's still... It was the start of the season that really killed them. And I think if they had been this consistent throughout the season, I think they really could be troubling some teams right now for a playoff spot. But I think mathematically it's possible, and I won't write them off. But it's going to be really tricky to do, and they need a hell of a lot of results to go their way. But they still look pretty exciting in attack. There's some resilience in defence. It does lack at some points in the game. There are times where they look to be able to change momentum very quickly. Sometimes it goes against them. Sometimes it goes in their favour. But I like where they're at. And they're building a good foundation. And I think moving forward, I think Castleford fans should be relatively happy with what they're doing at the moment. So Castleford Tigers still in 9th place. On to 8th place, and still in 8th place are the Leeds Rhinos. The gap between Leeds and Castleford is tiny at the moment. Leeds. What is going on with Leeds? It's a tricky one. It's a tough one. I think their effort, though, against Warrington was decent. They threw the ball around well down the left-hand side, especially. I think Lockie Miller had a great game. Jared O'Connor was solid defensively. Brodie Croft felt a little bit quiet, but Lastoni through the middle was an absolute tank. I think he had a hell of a game. So there was some moments here and there. I think defensively they had the moments, but allowed Warrington too many offloads to create the second phases. But relatively effort-wise and performance-wise to how they have been the last couple of weeks, much, much stronger. Whether they can back that up again, we'll have to see with Brad Arthur coming in. Hopefully there's a bit of a turnaround for them. But the performance against Warrington wasn't too bad, actually. It wasn't too bad, and I feel like I could have moved them down one for Castleford to go up. But I think if Castleford didn't concede as many points as they did against London, and Leeds actually weren't as good as they were, not saying that they were good, but they were okay at times. They looked troubling, and there was some good efforts in there. That's why they've retained that 8th spot, but the gap still to Castleford is tiny, so they could move down again. But I have a feeling with Brad Arthur coming in, I don't see it actually getting any worse. I think Leeds might be on the up. Maybe not a playoff spot, but I think things will look better for the rest of the season with him coming in. Moving on to 7th place, and still in 7th place, I have the Leigh Leopards. They got the win. They've been a bit of a weird team to place because they had such a bad start. That really set them back. And they've been decent. I think overall defensively, if you look at the points they've conceded, it's not even that far off Catalans or that far off even Hull KR. If you look at the average points per game, it's not that far off those teams. It's just in attack, sometimes they're lacking, which feels weird because of the individuals. And yes, they dealt with a lot of key injuries early on. So, that's a big detriment to their points for. But since then, I think they've still been lacking at times. They've had some great games in there. But they're just not the free-flowing attacking team that I remember from last season. Like, they're still strong enough to beat a lot of teams. But it's just not the same. There's something lacking. I don't know what it is. And I would have thought with Matt Moylan coming in that they'd be even more dangerous. Top 4 potential. I just haven't really seen that from them yet. Defensively, for the most part, very, very good. With a few iffy ones in there. But I think the issue for me right now is attack. If they can just figure something out, I think mathematically they can still make playoffs. But again, they're a team that needs a lot of results to go in their favour. Whether they can make playoffs is very, very unlikely at the moment. But I think at least they'll pick up a few more wins. But yeah, I think they're a weird team at the moment and a little bit tricky to place. But they're doing all right. So Leigh Leopards still in 7th. Moving on to 6th place now and moving down 2, I have the Salford Red Devils. This is a little bit harsh, but it is a mixture of their result this week and teams that need to move up based on their results as well. So it is a bit harsh given how good they have been the last couple of weeks. But to concede 20 points is not the end of the world. Plenty of teams have done it. 20 is not, it's not the most ridiculous number of points to concede. But to score 0, it doesn't look great on a CV, does it? And one of the teams that's had to move up was the team that kept you to 0. So again, I need to mention that between 6th place and 2nd, the gaps are tiny and they can change week to week. Next week there could be even more changes, very limited this week. In attack, Salford still control games pretty well. Defensively, for the most part, are fine. I think this is probably one of those games, it was a bit of an outlier. That is not a typical Salford performance. And maybe Catalans are just really starting to turn things around. Maybe. But I guess time will tell. We'll just have to see. But I'm not panicking about Salford. They just maybe need to work on a few things. I think they're still firmly playoff contenders. It's going to be a little bit tricky against the teams that are on the edge of playoffs at the moment. But I think they should be fine. If they don't make playoffs, I'll be surprised. But it's just making sure that results like this don't happen again. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird result. Salford fans won't be happy about it, obviously, but I don't think it's too much to worry about going forwards. So, Salford Red Devils down 2 in 6th. Moving on to 5th place now and moving up 1 this week, I have the Catalans Dragons, scoring 20 points, conceding 0 against Salford. And as I mentioned, the gap between 6th and 2nd is tiny, and that result, for me, just justified moving them up 1. I think over the last 2 weeks now, Catalans have looked a little bit better, looked more commanding. All that stuff with Nicarima and Takiaho, I don't know if that's going to have too much of an effect on their performance. I don't know how present they were during training or meeting. Obviously, they would have been in meetings, but how present they were amongst the group. How much of an influence did they have? Maybe that would be a positive. Maybe they were a bit of a stain on the atmosphere, on the culture around the team. I don't know. I don't know what the issue with them was. Something about a concert. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I also don't care. But Catalans are a team in a little bit of limbo. They are a bit like how Huddersfield were a few months ago, and they're a bit like how Leigh are now, except just generally speaking, a stronger team overall. So they can be strong defensively, a little bit irregularly, but more consistently than Leigh. And attacking-wise as well, do have their off days, can struggle, but less so than Leigh. So they are, for me, similar to Leigh, but a little bit more reliable in what you get out of them. I'm not sure if they've got it in them to make a playoff spot, because if they have another dip like they had a few weeks and months ago, I don't know if it'd be enough, or if they've done enough to keep a playoff spot, because we're getting into the last 9 or 10 games, something like that. They're a decent team, but I think over the next couple of weeks I need to see more consistency defensively. Obviously, they probably will concede points next game, but it's just, can they keep that defensive resilience, and can they start shutting teams out a little bit more and get back to, or keep that home ground as the fortress that it once was before they picked up a few losses in a row. And if they can improve their away performances as well, I think playoffs should be possible for Catalans, but they're up 1 in 5th. Moving on to 4th place now and moving up 1, I have the Warrington Wolves. Their last 2 performances back-to-back against Huddersfield and Leeds, 2 very commanding performances, a lot of offloads, looked in control. Not too much focus on the kicking game because they didn't really need to worry about that too much, and these are 2 teams that have struggled over the past couple of weeks. The effort that they faced against Huddersfield, attacking their right-hand side defensively, they shut down very well. Not so much against Leeds, who looked a little bit more threatening, field position-wise as well. What I liked about Warrington's performance is that they were a man down for a total of 17 minutes, something like that, with the 2 sin bins. and actually controlled the game extremely well. So the sin bins happened when Leeds were in good field position, and then they conceded pretty much straight away off the back of those sin bins. But after that, the game reset, it took control, and they just looked completely fine. And at no point against Leeds did I actually feel worried that they were going to come back. There were some points where Leeds made it like a two-try game, something like that. And there was a 10-point gap, maybe an 8 or 10-point gap. I still wasn't worried because as soon as we had, was it Williams? Williams that came back on, I knew would be completely fine. Yeah, we just looked firmly in control. Defensively, pretty solid. And in attack, just, yeah, free-flowing. Duffy looked effective as normal. So did Williams. I think the carries from Vaughan through the middle were great. Same with Musgrove. So yeah, solid performances. Looks like we may have gotten away from all the Challenge Cup final stuff. Let's call it stuff. But yeah, going forward, a very tricky run of games. So I'm just going to call it now. Yes, I'm a Wire fan. I'm very critical about where I put them. I do think if Warrington somehow beat Saints and Wigan and Hull KR in the next 3 weeks, I don't think you could argue with Warrington being at the top of these power rankings after those 3 weeks. Unless the other 2 games outside of the Wigan game, they are just insane, like 50-0 victories. Warrington could be top of the power rankings, but it's going to be difficult to do. It's a very tough run of games, but we'll see. Warrington Wolves up 1 in 4th. On to 3rd place, and still in 3rd place, I have Hull Kingston Rovers. Some of the performances, or some of the moments in games, have been slightly off. They don't feel quite as strong as they did like early on in the season. I still trust them in most games because I think they can still dominate through the middle. I think they can spread the ball really well. I think they've got individuals to kind of dig them out of tough moments. There's just something about them right now. It's not a worry. I don't know. They just don't give off that same feeling of reliability that they used to. But I would still back them for the most part against most teams. But I think there's an element in their game where they can be beaten in more moments than they used to. I don't know what that is. I can't fully explain it. I can't quite put my finger on it. But it's more of a feeling than anything else, which is not the best way to present this. But yeah, I think Hull KR are still fine. I think they will challenge Wigan on most occasions, Saints on most occasions, Warrington, Catalans, Salford, any of the top 6 teams. Be fine against the bottom 6. But it's just, I don't know, too many moments in games. They're slightly off. I can't put my finger on it. But I think overall, they're still fine. So Hull KR, still in 3rd place. On to 2nd place, and still in 2nd place, St Helens. Only slightly. I need to see the kinds of the results that they put in over the next couple of weeks. I think the game next week against Warrington is going to be very telling for Warrington and for St Helens. The fact that they do still have some key players missing. I can't remember the full list of who wasn't available, but there's a few pieces in there. I know Walmsley's still not available, but not a bad effort. And yes, people will say, well, if you look at the fact that Wigan didn't have French or Field, I get it. I completely get it. But to hold that Wigan team to only 16 and to make it a competitive effort like that needs to be praised. So I think they are certainly at risk, if they lose to Warrington, of moving down. But I think for now, because Warrington only beat a sort of a rough-looking Leeds team, Hull KR only beat Hull FC, who's right near the bottom, and Saints were competitive against the best team in the league right now, that's how they're retaining 2nd place. But, as I said, they're on the cusp of dropping down. The lowest they've been this season is 3rd, and that was a few weeks back. I can't remember which week it was that they dropped down, but yeah, they're hanging on to 2nd place by a thread. But St Helens still in 2nd. onto first place, and still in first place I have the Wigan Warriors. You know, you look at the players, the key players that they were missing, and they managed to get it done. And this is what I referred to in a video last week about, you know, if they're missing French, you've got plenty of other players to back them up on the edges, through the middle. They'll be completely fine. And I think that's a real statement win, that, because, you know, if they had Field and French, like the full ensemble, people would be like, okay, well, you know, fair enough. But the fact that they're missing huge players, they're taking on still one of the best teams in the league in St. Helens, and managed to get a win with young players filling in, inexperienced players filling in. That's because you have the rest of the team, players on the edges and players through the middle, that can help to keep control and help to dominate games. And that's just the difference with them right now. And again, I'll reiterate, I think they've got the League Leaders Shield sewn up. Unless there's a loss to a top team that comes up that maybe derails confidence or something like that, or key injuries, like even more long term, French being out for weeks and weeks, I don't know. If something comes up, then that's the only thing I think that would take away their League Leaders Shield. But yeah, Wigan look great right now. I don't know when their next loss is coming. If they'll even lose again this season, I don't know. But yeah, Wigan Warriors still in first place. So that's going to do it for my Super League Round 17 power rankings. If you've got your own list, do let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, that's going to be it. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you next time.